The dynamic duo known as the Holy Brothers, Marvin Etzioni and OG Discograffiti Soldier of Sound Willie Aaron, have a new album out called High in My Balloon. This remarkable album is the triumphant result of the two friends turning to music for comfort and strength after Marvin's bout with leukemia and Willie was forced to deal with the loss of his wife of 25 years to cancer. Americana Highways described it as like Brian Wilson snuck into the studio, fired up the machines, and did some work on some of the tracks not locked up. Really, the harmonies, basic tracks, songwriting, and lots of other odds and ends are that momentous. If you love the harmonies and sonic experimentation of Bookends era Simon & Garfunkel, the Beach Boys, and Beck's Circus Sea Change, you owe it to yourself to dig into the musical wonders of High in My Balloon by the Holy Brothers, available right now on Regional Records. Future Prophet Records is at it again, filling the charts with all the greatest hits from another dimension, a dimension where great music rules the airwaves like it used to in this one. Swear Tapes presents Crooked Teeth, available right now on Future Prophet Records. That's Future, Prophet Records.com. Order now. We're going to see some of these guys float in and out of the rest, but honestly, Arthur takes a hard left here and things change. Forever changes. Love does. You know, it's funny. Arthur was always in the business of telling the truth. At least that's how he saw it. And Love Forever Changes is really a glimpse into the very near future and the rest of his life, because love would really always be this forever malleable, ever-changing thing, the only constant being Arthur Lee, and that's it.
So the next period that we enter, you know, like as you said, none of these characters are really in the story except for Arthur, but it's an interesting period because I feel like he still has some of the creative spark and he's still a good songwriter, but it's a whole different approach, and there's kind of more in there that is of interest than I maybe had realized.
Welcome to Discograffiti, the deep dive podcast for music obsessives that gives maniacs like you and me the chance to connect with a brotherhood obsessed with rating the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever mattered. I'm your host, Dave Gebroe, and when I was a kid, I thought I loved music. But no, that was only the beginning. I almost lost my life, and in the process, it made music a top priority in a way I'd thought was completely unimaginable. I quit my job, went all in on Discograffiti, and never looked back. And so, with 3 new episodes each week, you're going to gain a comprehensive knowledge of an act's history and output in the time it takes to listen to one album. Each new guest swings a hard left into an area you either had no idea you needed to know about, or know all about and can't believe you're not alone out there. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on Love! Psst, along with our special guest, Joe Kennedy. This episode is part of a series called 7 and 7 and 7 is, the definitive 21-episode story of Arthur Lee and Love, which I've consciously crafted to act as the ultimate repository of fact and opinion on one of the greatest bands to ever walk the face of the earth, the almighty Love. It includes 13 episodes heralding the return of Discograffiti host OG Joe Kennedy, 6 episodes from a 4.5-hour interview with OG Love mainstay Johnny Echols, and 2 episodes from a 2.5-hour interview with the members of Baby Lemonade, who've served as Love now for coming up on 35 years. This is part 11, covering the first several months of 1968, during which the original Love fell to pieces. Here then is everything you could ever want to know about the period after which the band was no more. Here are just a few of the many things that Joe discusses with Discograffiti in this podcast. A look into why Forever Changes may have tanked as badly as it did. An in-depth examination of one of the great singles of all time, their 1968 swan song, Your Mind and We Belong Together, backed with laughingstock. Arthur's unsuccessful attempt to eject Brian McLean from the band, the fate of Brian McLean's solo album for Elektra Records, Love's doomed 1968 New York jaunt, which was plagued with a panoply of problems. The death of their road manager, which Arthur later documented in Your Friend and Mine Neil song on Love's next record, For Sale. What happened with Johnny Echols, Brian McLean, Snoopy Fisterer, Michael Stewart Ware, and Ken Forsey. And finally, the tragic life and death of Don Conca. Coming up, we've got incredible deep dive series on Jefferson Airplane with special guests Jack Cassidy, Jorma Kaukonen, China Kantner, and David Freiberg. Quicksilver Messenger Service with Lenny Kaye and David Freiberg again, and a hell of a lot more. So don't miss out. Open up your listening app right now and subscribe. And away we go then!
On January 30 and 31, 1968, Love returns to Sunset Sound to record a new single, this time with John Haney engineering, because at the tail end of the Forever Changes sessions, Bruce Botnick had a falling out with Arthur and they ended their working relationship. So they returned to Sunset Sound to cut another single. Alone Again Or had been a hit in LA, but it hadn't charted nationally, and it was thought that maybe a new single might hit the charts. Arthur was the sole producer this time out, and he had written two of his hardest rocking songs, Your Mind and We Belong Together and Laughingstock.
Arthur says, those were the last songs we ever recorded with the original Love lineup. Out of all the songs I ever did with the first Love band, Your Mind is one of my favorites. I remember when we did Laughingstock and what Jack Holtzman said about it. Well, what are you guys going to do next? As if to say, you've just about covered everything musically. At least I thought that's what he meant. Michael Stewart had been on the fence about the direction taken with Forever Changes, and he says, when we went back into the studio to record Your Mind and We Belong Together, I thought, finally, we're recording some cooking music. We were on the right track.
Johnny remembers that Your Mind and We Belong Together was one of the few songs that was finished when it was initially brought to the band. He says, it had a beginning, middle, and an end. It tells a story in itself, where the group was and where it was going. The song required only an hour or so for each of us to decide what we would play. Laughingstock was a different story, though. Johnny says about that one, there was no beginning, no middle, and no end. There were no chords, no words, and no song structure at all. Brian started playing folk chords, just sort of tripping on the guitar. Mike joined in on drums, followed by Kenny. I listened for a while, watching Brian's fingers, noting which chords he was playing, and after a bit, I found my part. Soon after, Arthur started singing and scribbling down words as we went along. After about an hour or so, we went to the studio and cut the instrumental track. We had been smoking herb, and Arthur started laughing. His laugh was so infectious, it started me going, and neither of us could stop. After at least another hour of false starts and laughter, we managed to finish the track. On the record, you can hear my voice on the right channel, and Arthur's on the left. Laughingstock was the right title. Really interesting to hear that quote, and then to hear how the track actually came out. It's interesting to me because the finished track doesn't sound like it came from that process.
No, not at all. In fact, Your Mind and We, it almost has a prog kind of structure where it's got all these different sections to it, almost like an extension of You Set the Scene and the way that Ken Forsey had assembled that. But I always preferred Laughingstock. To me, Laughingstock has, the rock and punch that Your Mind and We has, but it has autobiographical lyrics that I think, work absolutely amazing. And the riff is insane. It's awesome.
Well, Laughingstock starts off like it has kind of an impromptu kind of feel to it, right? The sort of intro. But then when it kicks in, it sounds like it just sounds like really well rehearsed, and like
it does.
It just sounds like it's really, really gracefully played.
Yeah, it just sucks that they ended the band on such a high.
Yeah, even the other one. It's interesting you say about Your Mind and Me picking up where You Set the Scene left off. I had that exact thing in my notes where it was like it just seems like that's the logical next song. If you play it chronologically, it just makes perfect sense.
That's not even in my notes. It's just like I always thought of like a almost Tales from Topographic Oceans kind of thing. And by the way, just as a short aside, they just announced a 15-disc Topographic Oceans box set for this year. I can't wait.
For people out there who don't know, Tales from Topographic Oceans is sort of central to our lore as friends.
Yeah, that's right. if our friendship actually has a lore, which I like to think it does. But, the legend goes that these two songs were going to be the initial tracks on a planned fourth Love album called Gethsemane. And Johnny actually clarifies the tale. He says, I came up with the name Gethsemane, which was the working title for the 3 or 4 songs I was going to do on Forever Changes. These were jazzy songs. I chose that name because we had been lied to by the record company about us doing a 2-album set. Jesus was betrayed by Judas in the Garden of Gethsemane, so that was my way of expressing my feelings about Elektra. There were a few songs that were written during that period, a couple of them with Arthur. We never went in and recorded a whole other album, though. There aren't any lost love tapes. That's all myth. There are maybe 3 or 4 songs that people haven't heard that are somewhere, but maybe they were lost with the masters. There's no finished album that Arthur destroyed. Since 2005, Johnny has been working with Vince Flaherty on his Gethsemane tracks, and as of 2025, he is still working on Gethsemane, still hard at work on it, and hopefully at some point soon that will be released, although he is not doing it in conjunction with the other guys who'd written stuff. You know, Brian's contributions that were going to be part of it, and Michael and Ken, whoever else had material. This is just Johnny's stuff. So, and to sort of pound the nail into the coffin a little further, Arthur Lee said, sorry folks, but that was it as far as the original Love group recordings are concerned.
Now, it's obviously a very interesting single. It hinted at the kind of album that they may have made, which is still in the vein of Forever Changes, still has the character of the band as players of this particular peak lineup. They, still have the great chemistry. They've put in all this work and time as a band, and they have this ability to play together. You feel like they probably would have done something in this vein, kind of jazzy, but maybe without so much string and horn stuff, maybe a little bit more pared down, a little bit more 1968 kind of sound, a little bit more back to basics, but still with their particular flair as a band and Arthur's writing. Obviously, they could have made another great album. Circumstances didn't really allow for that, but they were still working at a top level with this single.
Yeah. I mean, this is as good as anything else they've ever done. And, like I said before, it's not like a Seinfeld thing where, there's an almost inorganic sense of leaving while they're at their peak. These guys are truly at their peak. And the what ifs are kind of endless to me.
Now, one other thing that's interesting to me about it is neither of those songs are really in any way commercial, right? They're both kind of little mini sweet kind of songs, right? So they went in with the intention, maybe we'll have a hit single. None of those neither was going to be a hit single.
Yeah, they were never going to be a commercial concern. But yet it's still the perfect epitaph for the band. 2 perfect songs on, it's got to be one of my favorite singles of all time. The last couple notes we hear in the history of this version of Love is a couple of Ken Forsey's lone bass notes ringing out after all his bandmates have already stopped playing, and we're done with Love. And by early 68, Love gigs were becoming more and more sporadic.
Right, so that's the end of them as a recording concern, but they still kind of putter along as a band for a little while.
To be specific, they putter around for 7 more months.
Right. So Michael Stewart says, we used to play every weekend, then it was every second weekend, then it got to be once a month.
All right, that about does it. To hear the full episode, just visit patreon.com/discograffiti and either subscribe as a private or higher, or just purchase it as a one-off. If you are a fan of the show, please do one of those 2 to help ensure Discograffiti's continued existence. For over 4 years now, Discograffiti's Friday episodes have been completely free, and it's been my pleasure. But for a variety of reasons, Discograffiti's now moved to the subscription-based Patreon as our primary platform. Moving forward, our public stream will feature a teaser of the Friday episode and a Tuesday teaser of the bonus episode, and that's all. But here's the good news. Only $5 a month will get you the weekly Friday podcast to which you become accustomed. That's it. It's a no-brainer at just $1 an episode. And just that little bit will be what's required to help the show survive. To sweeten the pot, you'll also get regular installments of the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast. That's Rudy Fishman's podcast within a podcast featuring our Patreon members as guests. You'll also get access to over 100 back episodes of that show. The $10 Lieutenant tier gets you all that, plus access to half of the Patreon archive. That's hundreds of additional episodes, plus copies of my personal show notes, which include invaluable research, star ratings, and reviews. But the $20 major tier is the place to be, unless you can support the show on even higher tiers, which, if you can afford it, offers substantial perks, including advertising on the show and selecting the guests and artists I cover. With the major tier and above, you get it all. the Monday bonus episodes, aka the best stuff, the Friday show, the Soldiers of Sound podcast, plus access to the entire archive. That's many hundreds of Patreon episodes, an absolutely endless barrage of music entertainment, including 50 episodes of The Private Press with Paul Major, Rock Cousteau, Queasy Listening, and so much more. So support the podcast that's been supporting you for years. Discograffiti's calling, and it needs you, so don't risk feeling guilty by not giving. But enough of me yapping. Go on, subscribe now. Visit patreon.com/discograffiti and find the tier that's right for you. Stay tuned, because next week brings upon us the very first episode of Feed Your Head, the Jefferson Airplane Deep Dive. It's an epic interview with the great Jack Cassidy. Okay, here's the week up ahead. This Sunday, our weekly show within a show, the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound podcast, drops for our Patreon's private tier. These are real people with talent and a burning fire deep inside, just like you and I. Then, come Monday, the major tier gets a very special treat. Monday's bonus episode is the Johnny Echols interview that details his thoughts on the course that Arthur Lee and Love took after the original band broke up. It's also the part I always think of first when I look back at our conversation. There will be a very short sneak peek running publicly for free on Tuesday morning, but the entirety of the show will only be accessible on the major tier of our Patreon. A heartfelt Discograffiti thanks goes out to my beautiful son Mason, Joe Kennedy, Willie Aaron, Johnny Echols, Mike Randall, Rusty Squeezebox, David Green, Trace Marshall, Rudy Fishman, Becky Boyd, my mom, my dad, my incredibly loyal fans, and especially the entire Patreon community, the Soldiers of Sound. I love every last one of you, and this show would not exist without you, my friends. Speaking of friends, it's high time for some new ones. They're in our Facebook group, Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound. That's the best way to find out what's coming up on the show, but there's a hell of a lot more. You get recaps of the day in music history, the ability to pitch questions to guests, polls that put you in the driver's seat on guest and band decisions, and access to a thriving creative hub if you're looking for a collaborator. So make sure you don't miss out. You can find the link to the Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound Facebook page right there in the show notes. And if you don't mess with the Zuck, no sweat. Just email me at info@discograffiti.com and I'll keep you in the loop. So now that it's done and you want more, another way to dive even deeper into the amniotically dark and cozy psychedelic underworld of the 60s and 70s is to leap headfirst into our Spirit series. That's episodes 241 to 249, the Lenny Waronker interview, that's 244 and 245, our ongoing Graham Nash interview in which he talks about everything he's ever done, our 13-episode Moby Grape series featuring interviews with Peter Lewis, Don Stevenson, and Bob Mosley. That's episodes 208 to 214. The Beatles' Pete Best. That's episode 188. Our free design interview with all the Dedrick siblings. That's 160 to 162. Our Mamas and Papas series featuring my 16-hour Michelle Phillips interview, which she says is the best interview she's ever done. That's episodes 141 to 159. My 13-hour interview with Terry Kirkman and Jules Alexander about everything the association ever did. That's 109 to 113. My interview with Vashti Bunyan about her life and everything she's ever recorded, that's 103 to 104. My interview with Os Mutants Sergio Diaz, that's 86 and 87. Lou Barlow on the Zombies, that's 59 and 60. Foxygen's Jonathan Rado on Todd Rundgren, that's 37 and 40. Anthony Fantano on the Velvet Underground, that's 32 and 33. Bob Forrest on the band, that's 25 and 27. Andrew Sandoval on the Monkees, that's 22 and 23. Don Randy on David Axelrod, that's episode 17. And Pink Floyd is 1 and 2. And of course, be sure to mark your calendars, because next Friday, May 1st, we're coming at you with part 1 of an epic new series that's gonna knock your socks off. Feed Your Head, the Jefferson Airplane Deep Dive. It's my epic interview with Jack Cassidy. Trust me, you're not gonna wanna miss it. And so, from now till then, don't let our youth go to waste, lads and ladies. It's Discograffiti.